Another technology that's going mainstream in 2023 is CXL. So, as you've heard, we do a podcast here called Utilizing CXL, and we're going to be focusing on it throughout the year. But the reason for that is because there's been so many exciting announcements technology wise. CXL is planning to change the way that computers look and act. And it's not a shift in consumption, but a fundamental change in the way that they're designed and constructed. From PCIe to UCIe to the next generation server platforms that we've discussed, CXL is emerging as the technology to watch in the enterprise data center. And all of that happened in 2022. So all of this sort of, we started talking about CXL actually in 2021, especially with the news that Gen Z and CXL were joining forces in November of that year. But things really heated up this year. And in many ways, it wasn't directly CXL itself, because that was basically kind of on the roadmap to come to market, but supporting technologies. So in the first half of the year, we heard a lot about other technologies that are involved with CXL. So for example, we had the PCI Special Interest Group announce PCI Express 6.0, the final spec for PCIe 6 in January. And PCIe 6 is a fundamental technology to the next generation of CXL devices that are going to be coming out, sort of the next wave of CXL. We also heard about PCIe 7. This was another announcement that we got this year in June, talking about increased bandwidth. And the insiders tell me that a lot of this work is really done as a way to support CXL in future servers and to give additional capabilities to CXL. Now, there's a couple other things that are kind of going into this as well. There's another spec called UCIe that we talked about in March. And UCIe is really interesting because it's essentially a standard way to interconnect chiplets within a processor. So as you may know, most CPUs or processors these days are actually not a monolithic wafer anymore. They're actually little things that are all kind of linked together. And those can be linked together in a few different ways. One way is something that we actually reported here as well, called just a bunch of wires. We talked about that in July, which is something Open Compute Foundation was pitching. But another way is a technology called UCIe that was announced back in March. UCIe, think about it as sort of, it brings in concepts and technologies from PCI Express, from CXL, and from all sorts of other areas of computing in a way to have you stitch together different little chiplets from maybe even different manufacturers, maybe manufactured on different process nodes, all on the same chip. But just like the PCIe announcement, all of this is related to CXL, and all of this is related to sort of changing the way computers will look in the future. And CXL continued to get a lot of momentum. We saw this at the Flash Memory Summit in August as well, where they announced that OpenCAPI emerged with CXL Forum. That was or CXL Consortium. That was another competing, maybe pre-existing standard. So now the CXL Consortium includes basically all of OpenCAPI, all of Gen Z, and a lot of that stuff is being brought into the spec. We also saw at the Flash Memory Summit a CXL Forum Day that was repeated with us and our friends at MemVerge in New York, and then again at Open Compute Summit, where we brought together the entire industry that's working on CXL devices. And boy, it was a lot. For example, Samsung was first to market with a CXL memory expansion card, and since then we heard about one from SK Hynix as well. We heard companies, Astera Labs, IntelliProp, Rambus, working on supporting chipsets as well. And as I said, the big news came at supercomputing when AMD released Genoa, which includes CXL support, 1.1, as well as more than that with PCIe 5. So basically, CXL is coming, CXL is here, and it was a big news story for us in 2022, and it will be in 2023 as well.